Hi and welcome back to my channel. In this video I'm going to be going over the markouts which happened as a part of the production process of Alice in Wonderland. During this production process of Alice in Wonderland, as a part of my job role as a DSM, I was required to complete 4 markouts in the rehearsal spaces and studios. This is important as then the actors know where the set is going to be, but also which different set pieces are going to be flying into what positions so they can block around it and not have a real big impact when it comes to actually taking the show. This is also important so that they know where the sliding cogs that are used will be coming in and out of stage. This is really important as these are manoeuvred by the actors themselves, and having where they start and end drawn out on the floor means that they won't get confused and they could easily see where they're going to end up. This means that they can block effectively around this and not have to use up valuable time when it comes to tech, trying to reblock these parts, as the markout that we completed would have been able to mean that they could already block for these eventualities. Before we completed the markouts, we asked the director during a production meeting and via email when and where he wanted the markouts to be completed. This is really important as we needed to make sure that we were completing the markouts in the areas which the director required them. This also meant that we didn't waste time completing markouts in rooms and studios which he didn't need them. After this discussion, we knew that he required a markout to be completed in Studio 135 and 134, with the middle section being taken out, in the broadcast studio as well as a fitness suite. However, due to lessons being in all these rooms at different times during the week, we had to communicate with the production manager to see what times we would be able to get into these spaces to complete the markouts, as it ended up being very complicated with lessons constantly being used in these rooms. Before completing any of the markouts, we spoke to the set designers and constructors to make sure that we had the most updated version of the ground plan, and to make sure that the ground plan was in a 1:25 scale, which we assumed it was. Once we had gathered this information, I started to work out each measurement, as the ground plan didn't actually have any of the measurements on them. This meant I had to measure the length of the structure of the ground plan with a ruler, and then take that measurement and multiply it by 25 to get a 1:1 scale, or the actual size it would be on the stage. This is really important that these calculations were done correctly, as one wrong measurement could have thrown the whole markout off, meaning that we would have had to restart, wasting valuable time. The first space that I completed a markout was in the broadcast studio, as for the last 40 minutes of a day, nobody was using it. This meant that we could quickly start completing the markout. However, it was the slowest markout that we'd completed, as we needed to figure out the measurements of the ground plan in resemblance to the room, as the markout didn't completely fit into the broadcast studio. This meant I had to decide to cut off the front section of the stage. This section, which is out of the proscenium arc, as there was no set here, I decided, because of no flying set, therefore this set wouldn't actually have an impact on their blocking in the same way of cutting the back part of the stage, where there is a lot of set as well as a lot of flying set that flies in and out during the production. Overall, the markout in this room went really well. However, it did take us a bit longer than we had anticipated, as I was trying to figure out how to fit a smaller space of the stage into the room, as well as making sure that all of the important sections of the markout were in the room. It was also important that we took our time with this one to make sure it was correct, as it was our first markout that we had completed, so it had taken us longer than the other ones, as it was the first time that we were figuring out what colours to use for different sections, as well as making sure that all of the measurements we worked out previously were correct as a part of the actual markout. The second room we completed a markout in was the dance studio rooms, 135 and 134, where the middle can be taken out of these rooms to create one big room, which is how the director wanted us to complete this markout. The room was big enough to complete the whole markout, and it was going really well and a lot faster than the broadcast studio, as we all knew what we were doing, as well as we knew that all the measurements were going to be correct. However, due to having to come in during the holidays, as the room is used for lessons in normal school time, to complete this markout, it meant that only me and one of the DSM were able to come in to complete it. And then the other DSM had to leave early for different reasons, meaning that I had to complete parts of the markout by myself. This took me a lot longer than normal, as normally we'd have at least 2 people, as you need more than 2 people to be able to complete a markout, because you need to do more than 2 things at once, including measuring and taping it down. So even though it was going really well at the start and we were going really quickly as we had enough people to complete it. When it was left to be by myself, I still completed it effectively and quickly, but it did take a little bit more time than I thought. However, it still went quicker than the broadcast studio when putting it all together. The final room, which was the fitness suite, was the most successful markout out of all of them which we completed. Me and 2 other DSNs completed this markout, meaning that we were able to complete it effectively as well as relatively quickly, as it was our 3rd markout, so we were well practiced at completing this markout. As well as having 3 of us meant that it went smoother as we worked well as a team, being able to communicate effectively and complete the markout quickly. Overall, the markouts were very successful and helped the actors in the rehearsal spaces, meaning that they were serving their purpose of the rehearsal process, meaning that they saved us time when it came to tech, as they'd already blocked around the different flying in pieces of set, as well blocking around the actual stage they were going to be using.